What up YouTube, it's Rules for Rebels here, and in today's video I wanted to talk about high-risk merchant processing or high-risk credit card processing. Now, we're basically going to be addressing the topics of why is your business considered high risk, what industries are considered high risk, what processors will work with you, going offshore, which is outside of the US, or staying domestic, and lastly, how to beware of scams. So, first of all, anyone watching this video, you probably have already been considered a high-risk merchant or have already been declined by Stripe or PayPal or First Data because they say you're high risk. The high-risk businesses are classified as high risk for a number of reasons. It could be due to the nature of your industry, or it could be due to, your business is a new startup, or you have a low credit score personally, or with previous merchants you've had a lot of chargebacks or something like that. So, why is your business considered high risk? Well, first we'll talk about the reasons why you might personally be considered high risk. They run your personal credit and your business credit when you sign up for a merchant account. So if you have really bad credit right off the bat, that's automatically going to be considering you high risk. You could have a very low risk business. You could sell hair bows or t-shirts, which is not high risk, but because your personal credit or your business credit is bad, they may consider you high risk. Also, if you've had a bad experience or have had a bad history with payment processors in the past, maybe you had a PayPal account and you had $300 worth of chargebacks and you never paid it and just closed your PayPal account. Well, PayPal is basically going to blacklist you, and you're going to be considered high risk from then on out. That's really the much less often the case than just your industry being blackballed as high risk. So that's things you can improve. You can improve your personal credit score if you have low credit. What you can't change is the risk associated with your business. So in a second here, I'm going to show you a list, and it's a very long list of what are considered high-risk businesses to merchant processors. And I'll give you one example is gas stations. A lot of people probably don't think gas stations are high risk. The reason it's high risk, it's not high risk of loss. It's high risk due to a lot of chargebacks, and they're only going to be for $1, $2, $5. But independent sales organizations who basically sell merchant services on behalf of a larger bank like a BMO Harris Bank, a Chase Bank, who are selling it on behalf of Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, they could potentially risk losing their ISO status or risk losing their relationship with Visa or MasterCard if they have excessive returns. Even something like PayPal. If you do a lot of returns, PayPal eventually will contact you and be like, you need to stop doing this. Visa and MasterCard are going to get mad at us. But the reason gas stations are considered high risk, typically when someone has a stolen credit card, they're not going to run right out and do a cash advance. They're not going to run right out and buy a big screen TV. What they're going to do is go to a gas station and either try to use the pump for a couple bucks, buy a Gatorade, buy a pack of gum, and all they're doing is making sure this credit card's still active, it hasn't been reported stolen, and it will work. Once they realize that the credit card will work, they then run over to Best Buy and buy 10 flat screen TVs. When the person realizes that their credit card's been hacked, scammed, used, stolen, whatever, they call up the credit card company. The credit card company says, what was the last transaction you made? Well, the last transaction I made was at Baker Square. I ordered a piece of pie. So everything after that, the credit card company is going to dispute. So, yeah, the big screen TVs are getting disputed, but so is that $1 charge at the gas station. So for that reason, gas stations get a lot of chargebacks, and they're considered high risk. The real reason for the high-risk industries is basically because potentially the credit card company or the independent sales organization who's selling the merchant services, they're essentially, if they're batching you out in one day, they're at the end of the day the ones on the hook for that money. So let's say you do $50,000 worth of transactions and 40,000 of them are charged off. Most likely, if you have a quick payment schedule, they've already paid you 50 grand, so they're out $40,000. They're out $40,000 worth of chargebacks, and now they're having to come to you and be like, hey, you owe us 40 grand, and you may pay them, you may not pay them. And it's actually happened recently to both IOHawk, which is Tony Hawk's company, as well as Soldier Boy. Now, certain products tend to be more high risk. Let's just say, for example, if I get a stolen credit card, am I going to go buy a bunch of groceries? Well, no, groceries are hard to resell and get cash for. However, it's pretty easy to go buy 50 Xboxes and then go sell those Xboxes on Craigslist, eBay, Amazon, whatever. So hoverboards were the perfect thing for credit card scammers. Why? They take stolen credit cards, they buy hoverboards, which is a high dollar item right off the bat, $500, $600 a board. In the case of Tony Hawk, I think $1,200 or $1,500 a board. And it was something that prior to Christmas, they were selling like crazy. So you could easily sell them on Craigslist. So someone with a stolen credit card goes to iohawk.com or Soldier Boy's website, buys, a couple $1,000s worth of hoverboards. They get the hoverboards. They've already sold those hoverboards and pocketed the money, before the people whose credit cards were stolen even realize it. Well, now there's a chargeback. Stripe, aka Shopify Payments, has already paid out all that money to IOHawk or Soldier Boy, and I believe IOHawk was in the hole over $900,000. I think by the end of it, it was close to $1 million that they owed back to Shopify Payments, and Soldier Boy owed $250,000 in payments. And if you do a Google search on this, you can read the article. Basically, Soldier Boy emailed Stripe basically crying, like, well, what the heck? I thought you were supposed to have fraud filters. Well, basically, they do have fraud filters, but you actually have to monitor your account. Soldier Boy apparently had some friends or company or somebody handling the web part for him, so he hadn't logged into his account in like 6 or 8 weeks. Had he logged in, he would have realized, hey, this seems fishy that I'm shipping these hoverboards to California, but the credit card transactions are coming from an IP address out of Canada. Something seems funny there. Why are all these Canadian people sending hoverboards to California? It must be credit card fraud. But it's basically his own fault that this happened. But nonetheless, Shopify and Stripe both after that considered hoverboards high risk. So if any of you guys have ever sold hoverboards or anything related to hoverboards, you may have noticed that your Stripe or Shopify Payments account was shut down, and that's exactly why it happened. So let's go over here and take a look at the high-risk industries. So every credit card company is going to have a different parent bank, and they're all going to have different policies. They're going to list a lot of different businesses that are not allowed, and we'll kind of run through them real quick. But all of them also typically have a caveat at the end, which is basically like, for these, these businesses are not allowed, and at any time if we deem that you're high risk or may harm our brand, we can cancel you, which that pretty much leaves it up to, if for any time and any reason they want to cut you off, they can cut you off. So as it says here, the following categories of businesses and business practices are prohibited from using a Stripe service. Most categories are imposed by card network rules, so that's Visa or MasterCard, or our banking providers or processors. The type of listed items in the right column are representative but not exhaustive, so that means there are other things that they won't allow you to do. If you have a question about your business, contact them before signing up. Investment securities, investment and credit card services, so you can't sell stocks, mortgages, things like that. Why? First off, non-tangible goods are automatically considered high risk. But also, if somebody is able to use a credit card to buy bitcoins and then bitcoins go down in value, well, heck, just do a credit card chargeback, right? Money and legal services, so money transmitters, check cashers, money orders, currency exchanges, bail bonds, law firms, all these things are considered high risk. Virtual currencies, stored currency, again, I just gave an example of why Bitcoin would be considered high risk. I apologize, I only got 15 minutes to make this video, so I'm kind of flying through stuff. Intellectual property, basically you can't have copyright things or sell other people's goods. Counterfeit or unauthorized goods, obviously it's illegal to sell counterfeit goods, period, so they're not going to facilitate that. Lotteries, gamblings, bidding fee auctions, sports forecasting, odds making, fantasy leagues, etc. are all considered high risk. Any regulated product or service, you can't have a medical marijuana dispensary, you can't sell tobacco, fireworks, etc. All that stuff is regulated by the state. Adult content and services, pretty much pornography, escort services, adult toys, those are pretty much banned by all the major credit card processors, Stripe, PayPal, etc. Get rich schemes, understandably, mugshot publications. Basically, what this is, people put up websites where they publish everyone's mugshots, and then if you want to get your picture taken off of there, they're going to charge you $500. It's basically extortion. No value added services, don't really know what that is. Aggregation, drug paraphernalia, high-risk business, bankruptcy lawyers, drop shipping, etc., etc., etc. Multi-level marketing. So most of the stuff like illegal stuff. Actually, Stripe isn't too bad. Most of the stuff appearing on Stripe's prohibited list is like illegal stuff. A lot of other processors are much more picky. Video game or virtual world credits. Pretty much anything that's digital tends to be high risk and isn't allowed. Let's go over here to prohibited businesses. What can't you do over here? This is just some merchant applications. Stolen property, tobacco sales, drug paraphernalia, lottery, multi-level marketing, timeshares, travel agencies, airfares, long-distance services, male and female sexual enhancement products, prepaid phone cards, as seen on TV products, which is kind of odd. Sunglasses. You're not allowed to have sunglasses. Why sunglasses are high risk, I don't know. Some things you can understand why they're high risk. Others, you don't know. Human growth hormones, I think that's probably illegal. Check cashing. Counterfeit items, currency, coin, stamps.
Ponzi schemes, free gift prize, Canada only, high-risk merchant industries. So then sometimes they'll have a list of businesses that are allowed, but you need prior approval, and they're going to charge you higher rates for it. So diet centers, health clubs, internet access providers, liquidators, tanning salons, etc. It doesn't really matter why something's considered high risk. If you're considered high risk, you're considered high risk. But I just kind of wanted to give you guys an idea of like anything vaping or vaporizer related is going to be considered high risk. So we've kind of covered what industries are high risk. What processors will work with you? I've been told that some people say that First Data will take on some high-risk people. They may ask, they're not going to take on every high-risk industry, but, whereas some industries, just for example, there's a currency seller company called Travelodge. So the biggest currency seller in the world. They're in all the airports and all the malls. First Data does not allow the sale of currency, but I know I was just recently on a European vacation. I bought some money at TravelX. I paid with my credit card. And I noticed that they use First Data. So in some instances, if you're a large company, if you're established, if you have a brick and mortar business, they may consider you a little bit less high risk and take you on. So it never hurts to check with a company. Be upfront with them. Tell them what you do. Tell them why you're a good risk, and they may be willing to work with you. When it comes to high risk, there's offshore and domestic. Offshore would be like the clearinghouse or the clearing bank for your transactions, is like Bank of Tokyo, Bank of England, things like that. Personally speaking, I would never do high risk. I tried it one time. I had a terrible experience. Not only did the guy who set it up for me scam me out of a couple $1,000s, but also it was really weird. I was noticing every transaction I tried to put through after it went live was getting declined, and I thought the system wasn't working. It wasn't until later that I learned their system was working fine, but here's the problem. Most credit card companies have internal fraud filters and things like that built in. So that's why when you take a trip out of the country, you need to call your credit card company and say, hey, look, I'm going to be in Mexico from October 3rd to October 7th. They make a note on your account so that they don't freeze your account when they see your credit card being used in another country. However, if one of your customers calls you up and says, hey, I want to buy a vaporizer or whatever, when you put through a transaction, even though you're processing it in the U.S., the parent bank is Bank of Tokyo. So to the credit card company, they say, hey, Jim Smith or whoever his name is, Jim's not in Tokyo. Why is the transaction going off in Tokyo? So they're going to block the transaction. So potentially you could get the transaction to go through, but basically Jim's going to have to call his credit card company and say, hey, look, I'm making an online transaction. Please allow it to go through. And quite honestly, it's a big pain. It's not even worth taking credit cards if every single customer who wants to do a transaction with you you're going to have to talk to them. They're going to have to call up their credit card company. It's not as if you could throw it up on an e-commerce site and transactions are going to roll through. Every single customer you're going to have to explain this to, have them call their company. Most customers aren't going to be willing to do it, and even if they are, it's a huge headache to you. So stay with domestic. Obviously, you can get more risky businesses approved offshore. There's really only one instance in which I would do offshore things. If you're selling a product or something where there's a lot of value, let's say I'm selling vaporizers, and each one of these vaporizers cost me $50, and I'm selling them for $100. It's not a bad margin, but if something happens and I wind up losing all my money, or all my money tied up in rolling reserves goes away, or the bank steals it, whatever happens, I'm out a lot of money. The only instance in which I would do offshore, let's say I sell some kind of like virtual ebook. Really, there's no cost involved with that. With an ebook, there's a couple hours of my time that it took me to write it. But literally, whether I sell one ebook or whether I sell 1,000 ebooks, it's not costing me any money. So in a situation like that, I may do an offshore account, even if they keep a 10% rolling reserve, which is pretty much standard. If they steal all my money, who cares? It's not really any money out of my pocket. However, when you're selling a product that you're actually shelling out money for, if that money gets tied up or held or anything else, that money is coming out of your pocket. You lost money. And in terms of being aware of scams, I only got about a minute to wrap this up. I've heard that for every one legitimate high-risk processor there's out there, there's over 300 scams. Like I said, I ran into a scammer. When it comes to high-risk stuff, never, ever, ever put a deposit down. There's no reason for it. Any legitimate processor will not make you put money down up front. Never pay an application fee. There are legitimate people who charge application fees, but just to play it safe, don't pay application fees, because there's plenty who will do it for free. They're going to make plenty of money off you down the road. And in terms of the rates you can expect, I was just quoted today 8 to 14%. So you're going to pay quite a bit more than like the 3% or 1.5% or whatever you can get through a normal processor. I've run out of time, but if anyone in the processing industry wants to contact me, that offers a legitimate service, I'd be more than happy to recommend you.